The gender gap in the state agency is not an accident. Today, I'm joined by David Powell, who is the CEO of Andrews, a 40-branch estate and letting agency network along the M4 corridor. Thanks for joining me today, David. Before you switched the cameras on, I asked you what topics you wanted to talk about, and you said the gender gap in the state and letting agency and the fact it's not an accident. Why did you say that? Talk to me.
Yeah, this is an area we've worked relatively hard on over the last couple of years, and it's to ensure that as a business, yeah, we are represented across all of our business in the same way our customers are. Very broadly, Chris, 50% of our customers are female, 50% of them are male, and along with our staff. So it's probably only right that that's married up by the people that are managing that business forwards.
Okay, give me some numbers of give me some numbers of what Andrews have got on the different senior boards.
Yeah, our board as it sits at the moment for Andrews Property Group has 33% female representation. Our senior management team of Andrews, that are what we refer to as our executive team, that sits at 33% as well. Our heads of departments across our front office lines and our back office lines is sitting at 50% female representation.
Those are good numbers. Those are good numbers. Let's talk about the industry. You know, they're almost, you know, fundamentally at the first run of the ladder, your neg level, it vastly is the vast majority are female. But as soon as you go up to branch manager level and beyond, the numbers just drop off.
Yeah.
Why we said you said it's not an accident. Why do you think as an industry we are that way?
I think, like many industries, you got that biggest challenge where the expectation and likelihood is female will become mum at some point in that journey, and will have a career break whilst they go through that process. And I think that's a big hurdle. In other countries, you'll see that the male will also take the 9 months off as well as the female. So from an employer perspective, actually choosing whether or not you recruit that person or that person, whether or not someone's going to disappear from your business, that part eradicates straight away because they're both going to disappear. I don't think in England we're ever going to get to that. But I think, that's one challenge. I think the other challenge that many are facing is the flexibility to bring those people back into your business, and to give them the flexibility that's required to tackle home life whilst career life, and create them a platform to succeed. I think that's the bit that we've probably tackled relatively well.
So what is this an estate and letting agency problem, or do you think, or is this just generally a British problem?
For me, it's probably both, but it's certainly in our industry.
Okay, let's come back to estate agency. There's been a lot of women sat on that sofa, talked about this topic, and one of the big things is flexibility of time.
Yeah.
What have you done at Andrews to enable? If we're not looking after our negs, they're the ones that are going to be the managers that will end up being the Harry and Alex's.
Yeah.
The two most visual women in Andrews is Alex and Harrod.
Yeah.
And if you don't mind me saying, they're both exceptional players in what they do.
Yeah. So if we take those two as examples, but both of them are on flexible working arrangements, so that they can still pick their little ones up from school. They're encouraged to do so. And with both of those that's fine. That's part of the arrangement, and you get their time back as and when they can provide it. They're both great at their jobs, so you give them the freedom to do what they need to do.
Do you offer that same amount of flexibility with Flo, the neg, who works at your branch in Bracknell or whatever branch?
Yeah, that's where operationally it becomes a little bit more difficult. I think when you're in senior roles, you have that flexibility. You're not necessarily tied to a branch, or have a responsibility to keep the door open, or responsibility to be there for the customer in the same way. So it gets a little bit tougher. But If we have a negotiator that goes off and comes back, then absolutely part of that process is we will look at what that requirement may be, and if requested, we'll sit down with that person
Do
to
you
talk
do
through.
you think we as an industry, and I've heard this happen many times out, not with Andrews, is people insist that you have to be there at 8:30 and they insist that you have to be there till 5:30.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you think
Yeah, I think that's slowly dying out of the industry, but
okay.
I'd agree with you. It certainly has been there historically. Yeah, I know one particular example off the top of my head where we've got a mum that drops children off to school and comes into the office 9:15 every morning. That's the arrangement, and that's fine. And yeah, someone that's delivering results, doing their job well. Why wouldn't you support it?
Do you think there's too much of an assumption that if the children go ill or something, the mother always has to pick them up? And what can employers do to
Yeah, that's part of the process, right? And I think there is an assumption that the female will often pick that up. Whether or not that assumption's right or wrong, but I think that certainly would be assumption of many. It's not always the case with some of our employees, I dare say. But so be it. Yeah, that's one of the parts we need to help them
do
through.
you think employers could be a little bit more switched on by allowing their staff member to take a laptop home and there's a phone? And again, with software nowadays, you can tell if someone's taking the mickey or not, can't you?
Yeah, you can do, and again, I think as a group we've been pretty good at that. All of our employees are can be mobile. They're all laptop. They're all mobile phone. So they don't have to be tied. I guess you've got the challenges of look if you're in a branch and it's a branch of a small number of employees, then that will create some pressure on keeping the branch open whilst you're doing appointments as well. So there are those challenges that come in. But again, look, you've got to look after your employees, and these things are important.
What would your advice be to any estate agency bosses watching this with how you've learned running a 40 branch network?
Yeah, I think they probably already know the answer. But look, if you look after your employees, you give them the flexibility, you generally get that back very, very quickly. And try and find ways to allow that to happen. Yes, the results are always important. Of course they are. But if you're still getting the results and you're providing that flexibility, the staff will significantly value that.
Thank you for your time today, David. Please put your comments in the reply box underneath this video if you've got any thoughts on what you would recommend bosses do or whatever you found yourself both good and bad. Thank you for your time today.